My wife got pregnant with a smart scientist's baby. She said she wanted a child with good genes. Hi all, I'm a 32-year-old man, married to my ex-wife, Sophie, who is 30, for 2 years. Sophie and I were close, and even as I tell this story, it still surprises me that Sophie cheated on me after everything we've been through. Sophie and I knew each other before we began dating. We grew up in the same neighborhood and knew each other well. When I was about 15, her parents moved to a new house, and we lost touch. Years later, we unexpectedly ran into each other as adults. As a kid who didn't understand much about love, I realized I had a crush on Sophie. When we ran into each other as adults, the spark came back. We talked for a while and shared our contact information. Sophie happened to be single at that time. After spending weeks together, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she agreed. We were together for a year before we got married. I realize this may seem straightforward, but I loved Sophie and felt whole when we got married. She had changed in many ways, but she was still the smart, funny, and lively Sophie I remembered from our childhood. She started teaching junior high school, and I worked as a mechanic in an auto shop. Sophie was smarter than me, and she liked intelligent people. I really liked everyone I encountered. I wasn't really searching for smart people like Sophie was, which set us apart. When we were catching up and spending time together, I felt like I was out of her league. After getting to know her better and falling in love, I became more secure. I always try hard to make her happy. Our marriage was enjoyable, kind, and filled with joy. Being married with her was enjoyable and calm. We hardly had any fights or arguments. Sophie and I were dating when she shared that she couldn't stand being yelled at. She made me promise not to raise my voice, regardless of how upset I might get. I made a promise not to raise my voice at her, and she agreed to do the same. During an argument, it would feel like a deep discussion, yet we wouldn't raise our voices. Sophie and I share the same views on children. We didn't believe it was necessary to wait years to have kids. I didn't see the logic in that. I wanted to have a child a year or two after getting married so that our child could grow up with us as we got older, instead of waiting until we were older to have our first child. Right after we got married, we began trying to have a baby. Sophie sometimes missed her period and worried she might be pregnant, but then her period would show up the next day. In the first year of our marriage, she got pregnant, but sadly, she miscarried after a month, and we lost the baby. This was an emotional moment for us. We had been waiting for months to get pregnant, and after she finally did, we lost it. After she lost her first pregnancy, we paused for a bit before trying again, and sadly, the same thing occurred. She experienced another miscarriage at 5 weeks. When she miscarried for the second time, she woke up one morning to find she was bleeding heavily. I took her to the hospital, and they confirmed that she miscarried. This really affected us mentally. For months, we couldn't even discuss the idea of getting pregnant again. I did my best to be there for her during that time and to stay strong for both of us. Eventually, we let go of it all and moved forward. I understood she was dealing with a lot emotionally, so I chose not to bring up anything about having a child until she had fully processed her last 2 miscarriages. Our marriage recovered from the tough months, and everything went back to normal. Even when things were fine, I treated Sophie like royalty and fulfilled her every wish. Other than going to school to teach the kids, she didn't do much else at home. I handled the cooking for months, cleaned the house, did the laundry, mowed the lawn, shopped for groceries, and even made special meals on some days. I was careful about how I made her feel because she believed something was wrong with her and that she brought bad luck. I understood she said that due to the miscarriages. My main goal was to show her that she was perfectly fine, so I gave her all my love and attention. About 4 months after we lost the second pregnancy, I was cleaning the house like I usually do on weekends when she approached me, tears in her eyes. When I saw her, I was worried something bad had happened, but when she told me she was pregnant, I was really happy. I didn't think she would say that to me for a while. I didn't say it out loud, but I was worried she might lose the baby again. When she told me she was over 8 weeks pregnant, I felt so happy. Interestingly, she had no idea she was pregnant. She mentioned that she felt different and chose to take a test. Her periods were late, but she believed it was because of her hormonal problems. She showed no signs of morning sickness, and her pregnancy caught us off guard. Later that week, we visited the doctor to discuss how to prevent her from losing the pregnancy. The doctor advised her to avoid stress. After hearing that, I realized I needed to improve how I cared for Sophie. I did everything possible to make her comfortable. I was worried about anything that might lead to another miscarriage. I really didn't want her to experience that pain again. After the scan revealed she was having a boy, I felt a rush of excitement about becoming a father. I always wanted to have a son first, and then a daughter, though I can't say why. After the scan, I began looking for the baby items we would require. Each morning, I woke up hoping for the safety of Sophie and our baby. I was excited to see the baby grow in Sophie's stomach. I would spend a lot of time resting against her baby bump, chatting with the baby. The moment felt special to me. Sophie, in her 3rd month, mentioned she wanted to take a break from work to focus on her health and the baby. I saw no issue in helping her with money. I was really happy that she took her health and the baby so seriously. 6 months into the pregnancy, something happened that changed everything for us. One evening, after dinner, Sophie was so tired that she fell asleep on the couch. I couldn't bring her to our room, so I got some blankets and made sure she was comfortable while she slept. Her phone sat on the table alongside the cups and plates from dinner. While I was clearing the table, her phone went off. I ignored her screen when the first notification popped up. When I came back from the kitchen and saw the messages still coming in, I decided to silence the notifications so they wouldn't wake Sophie up. While attempting to mute her phone, messages kept popping up on WhatsApp and Instagram. I became interested. I used her fingerprint to unlock her phone and check who had been texting her a lot. I looked at her phone and noticed a contact saved with just a love emoji that kept sending her messages. I wanted to find out who it was, and my heart dropped when I read the messages she received. During their chat, I gathered that she was speaking to a guy who kept asking her, "How's my baby doing today?" along with other questions about her health and pregnancy. I kept reading their messages repeatedly to figure out if he was a doctor. After some investigation, I discovered he wasn't. I was looking at her Instagram. A man messaged her on Instagram and included a picture of his private part. I wouldn't have realized they were talking on Instagram if he hadn't sent that message. I discovered Sophie was cheating on me through our Instagram chat. I was curious about who her affair partner was and what made her choose him over me. I discovered he was a scientist while looking at his Instagram profile. I couldn't believe it. I spent the entire night coming to terms with the fact that this was real. The hardest part was that I was trying to care for someone else's child. I worked hard to make sure he would be born into a good home. That night, I grabbed some clothes and drove to a friend's place to stay over. I couldn't take Sophie anymore once I found out she had been using me the whole time. It's hard to believe that her affair partner was aware of our marriage. He would sometimes ask her if I was taking good care of her and the baby, and she'd respond with something like, "Yay, he's trying." Just hearing that she said I was trying really angered me. I handled everything at home, looked after her, made her favorite meals at odd times, gave her neck and foot massages, and managed her mood swings. I felt completely broken when I read that. She was really wrong to cheat on me with another man, and then she lied about me being the child's father. At about 3 a.m., Sophie woke up and called me to ask why I wasn't home yet. I told her flatly that I needed to go to the car shop to handle some unfinished business. I said I would come back home later in the morning, but I didn't. After 4 days of not going home, she started to worry. She kept calling, but I didn't answer. She visited the car shop where I worked, and they informed her that I requested the entire week off to deal with some family matters. While I was away from home for 4 days, I created a fake Instagram account to gather more information about Sophie's affair partner. I found out he had worked as a scientist for many years and had even received a notable award. On the second day of my digging, I discovered that he was married to a psychologist, and they had 2 kids together. I found his wife's information after looking more closely. I contacted her on Instagram. I got straight to the point and informed her that her husband was cheating with my wife, and I shared the proof. I saw all those chats on Sophie's phone and took pictures of them. I attached them as evidence. She got back to me the next day to arrange a meeting, and I saw her on the fourth day, the day I came back home to Sophie. When we met, she kept saying she couldn't believe her husband was cheating on her. I told her he was. She looked at the pictures of their conversation I had taken, and she was heartbroken. She almost fainted when I mentioned that my wife was expecting a baby with her husband, lol. After the meeting, she mentioned she would talk to her husband, and I said I would do the same. I couldn't hide the fact that I was hurt because I really was. I got home that evening after being away for 4 days, and when Sophie saw me, she ran to me. As soon as I walked into the sitting room, I told her I wanted a paternity test for the baby, and she looked shocked. She asked why I wanted a paternity test, and I said I needed to be sure the baby was mine. When I picked up the phone, she laughed and told me I was being ridiculous, insisting she wouldn't do a paternity test because the baby was mine. I realized she was trying to manipulate me. If I hadn't known the truth, her performance would have made me think I was the father of her child. That day, I yelled at her for the first time in years, and she was surprised to see me act that way. Suddenly, she began to cry and claimed I was accusing her of cheating. She couldn't believe I would say that after all we had been through. I saw her crying and trying to manipulate me. Once she finished, I stood my ground and said I wanted a paternity test, no matter what she accused me of. I printed out the photocopies of the pictures I took of her chat conversations. I threw those pictures at her. She was surprised that I discovered her secret. After a brief pause, she explained that she was only flirting with the man and that nothing physical occurred between them. Her reasons were so silly that I didn't want to argue with her. I told her that any guy calling her baby his baby is serious, so I need to see the paternity reports. After a long argument, she finally agreed to take the paternity test. We took the paternity test, and the results showed that the baby wasn't mine. Sophie realized it was pointless to keep pretending, so she began asking me for forgiveness. She claimed she got pregnant from a sperm donor and had no idea who the father was. I realized she was not telling the truth, but I was too frustrated and exhausted to say anything, so I just walked away from the hospital. I returned home and gathered the essentials. She came home while I was packing and tried to stop me. In that moment, I was really angry and felt like I might do something I'd regret, so I decided to leave the house. No matter how I try to explain my disappointment and heartbreak, I don't think words can truly capture what I felt. As I was heading out, Sophie got all dramatic and started throwing names at me. I left the house, and we didn't talk for a week, no matter what she did to make me stay. She called me daily, leaving voicemails where she cried, shouted, and begged. It felt as if she had different sides to her personality. 2 days ago, her parents called and yelled at me. They labeled me a deadbeat father and claimed I was the worst father any child could have. I really didn't want any drama, so I planned to divorce Sophie quietly without mentioning her cheating to anyone. She cheated on me and caused a mess, yet she still went and told her parents, friends, and anyone who would listen to her lies about me. I can't take it when others call me out for things when I know Sophie is the one they should be addressing. Her parents warned of serious consequences if anything happened to their daughter or the unborn child. Even though the child isn't mine, it's still a living being. I don't want that unborn to suffer, so I'm just staying quiet until she delivers. Update 1. Thanks for the comments. Someone commented when I said in my post that I wanted to divorce Sophie without complications. I really meant it when I said that. If you understand what I've been through since Sophie's miscarriage, you'll see why I said I didn't want any more drama. I've experienced enough issues in my marriage. It gets even crazier when I think about whether Sophie was cheating on me from the first year of our marriage. Some of you mentioned that marrying Sophie in a year seemed too quick. I thought I had known her since childhood, so dating for a year felt like no time at all. Anyway, that's behind me now. Last week, I posted on Facebook suggesting that Sophie had hurt me and messed up our plans. After that, a friend of Sophie contacted me. Some of Sophie's friends and colleagues are on my Facebook. That's just how social media goes. He was a teacher at Sophie's school, and he mentioned he had something to share about Sophie. I met up with him, and he said that Sophie was having an affair with some of the fathers of her students. I was skeptical when he said it, but then he played a brief video he had recorded in secret a while back. He said that Sophie was interested in the fathers of the smart kids in her class, almost like she was making a move on them. He said he was informing me to help me avoid a problem. He mentioned that the school knew about Sophie's bad behavior, which is why she was let go right after her pregnancy. I was shocked when he said Sophie was fired months before she told me she had quit. The entire time, I was focused on taking care of Sophie and ignoring my own needs. She was cheating on me. The only explanation had to be that her income stayed the same and didn't drop. Each morning, she would get ready for work and come back around noon as usual. She would come home and say how much fun she had in class with the kids, but it was all lies. I felt taken advantage of by Sophie. I had never experienced being lied to, used, or manipulated by anyone like that. After all I heard, I realized it was done between Sophie and me. Listening to all of that brought out a surge of anger in me that I didn't realize was there. I reached out to a lawyer to handle our divorce papers. I'm uncertain about my next steps after the divorce. I'll post another update once I'm finished dealing with Sophie and her issues. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this. Update 2. Hi all. I appreciate your encouraging words. As you all pointed out, taking Sophie back would be like shooting myself in the leg. I don't love her anymore, and I don't feel sorry for her. If she could do something so awful to me while I tried my best to be a good husband and father to the child I thought was mine, she could easily harm me while I slept. I'm being serious. Sophie can do anything. I finally faced her bothersome parents who wouldn't stop calling. I shared the pictures of the conversation between her and her affair partner in the family WhatsApp group chat. Then, I sent a long voice note to explain everything for anyone who might have trouble reading. I shared the pictures in the group chat before I talked to Sophie one last time. I confronted her about sleeping with other men, and I mentioned that the father of her child was a scientist. Her expression made it clear she didn't see that coming. She had lost weight from days of crying, thinking, and pleading for me to talk to her. I expected her to keep asking, but she realized her act was done. She got defensive and confessed that she was having an affair with a scientist. She straight up told me she did it because she wanted better genes for her baby, not my weak and dumb ones. I was shocked when she actually said that to me. She had no idea I reached out to her affair partner's wife and revealed that I discovered Sophie was a serial cheater. Sophie didn't seem sorry at all when she confessed to the affair. She thought the child support would be substantial. Sadly for her, her affair partner wanted to reconcile with his wife, so he pushed for a paternity test. When the results were revealed, it showed he wasn't the child's father either. Sophie had relationships with several partners during that period, including me, the scientist, and 2 other men, one of whom was the father of her school kids. Because of this, she couldn't determine who the father of her baby was. 2 weeks later, after her AP discovered he wasn't the father, my lawyer sent her the divorce papers. She initially refused to sign, claiming I had ruined her life and that I had to stay with her because of it. Really amusing. When her parents discovered she didn't know who the father of her child was, they disowned her in shame. She signed the divorce papers, and we are not together anymore. She thought she could outsmart me and ended up losing everything, even her family. Now, she has to raise the baby by herself. I hope she finds the baby's father. Thanks to everyone who suggested I reach out to her AP in my last update. Thanks, everyone.